Turning your Bibles this morning to Genesis chapter 39. Genesis 39. Somebody tell me what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Joseph. Now somebody tell me that Sunday night, where did we leave Joseph off at? In prison. Remember Sunday night he went from the pit to the prison. Joseph was 17 years old when this whole journey started for him. And was this a journey that Joseph asked for? No. But it was a path that God had set before him. And Joseph was one we've looked at 2 weeks ago. We spent the morning and evening service looking at the fact that Joseph was one that was willing to serve God. He trusted God. He didn't question God. And those are things that we got to apply to our life today. Now today I want us to look at Joseph. When we left off that Sunday night, he went from the pit to the prison. This morning I want to talk to you about in prison through perseverance. In prison through perseverance this morning. Chapter 39, verse 21 says, "But the Lord was with Joseph." God ain't left him yet, and he's not going to. Can I tell you something? God won't leave you either. If God's not with you, you left him somewhere. He didn't leave you. It was by your choice if he's not with you anymore. It said, and the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did the Lord made to prosper. We see that the Lord is still blessing in Joseph's life, just like he did when he lived in Potiphar's house. Y'all remember there was a time when he lived in Potiphar's house, and everything that Potiphar had was blessed, and everything. So he gave it all to him. And then all of a sudden the enemy came by one day and thought he'd use Potiphar's wife to trick him. He said, I ain't going to have no part of it. He got out of there and he ran, left his clothes there in the woman's hands, and she went and made up a story on him. And he found himself in prison. But see, God was still with Joseph. Chapter 40, verse 1 says, "It came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward." Now, can I remind you, Joseph is still in prison. Even though Joseph had found favor with the keeper of the prison, Joseph was still there. Joseph was as much of a prisoner now as he was when he first went in. Joseph wasn't allowed just to go out and wander around wherever he wanted to go. Joseph was kept in prison. Now, that's a good place for somebody that want to start grumbling and complaining, isn't it? Can I ask you this morning, when we left off from last time, I asked you, could you still be faithful to God going from a pit to a prison? Here we see that Joseph is still faithful. God's still with him. Now Joseph finds himself in a situation where he's got two men that's been placed in there with him, and they're fixing to need his help. Can I tell you something this morning? You're going to go through seasons in your life. Some of you are going through them now. Some of you have been in them for a number of years. But that you are there if you allow God to be with you, and if you allow God to trust you, God will use you in that season in your life. No matter how bad it seems to you, no matter if you think you deserve to be there or not, God can use you right where you are, no matter what situation you are in. Now the question is are you willing to let God use you while you're sitting in the midst of a prison that you didn't do no reason to be there? Now I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people, if they'd have been in Joseph's situation, they'd have sat there and they'd have sulked and they'd have pouted until there was nothing left of them. They'd see other people coming in, they'd say, well, that's your problem. I got my own issues. I can't help you, I'm sorry. Did you ever find that operating in Joseph's life? It said that the butler and the baker were put in prison with him. I wonder where the candlestick maker was. Y'all remember that little nursery rhyme? That was the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, wasn't it? But this was the butler and the baker. They got put in there with Joseph. It said in verse 5, they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. Now, isn't this interesting what Joseph says? He says, and he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his Lord's house, saying, wherefore look ye so sad today? Now, listen. This is a man asking, why are you so sad? Listen, these people had done something that made Pharaoh mad. So chances are they deserve to be there. But here's a young man sitting in prison, been locked up, hadn't done anything wrong, been faithful in all that he did, and he sees them over there sad and sulking and pouting about it, and he said, what's wrong with you? Joseph found a way to be happy in the midst of where he was. He learned to trust God where he was. He said, why are you so sad? They lost sad people today. Verse 8 said, they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Do you remember what Joseph's thing was for God? He was an interpreter of dreams. That was a gift that God had placed in his life. How much time have we spent talking about you using your gift God's given you, and how everybody that God puts into place, they all have a gift from God that's there to be used, and the question is whether or not you want to use it or not. And can I tell you this? It don't matter what season you're going through. You still have a responsibility to use your gift for God's glory. No matter what you face, no matter what you're going through, no matter if you're not getting what you need, you're still able to help somebody else. He said, tell me about your dream. Verse 9, the chief butler told him the dream to Joseph and said to him, my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. Boy, he was on it, wasn't he? The 3 branches are 3 days. And yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee to thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, and after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. Verse 16 says, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, when he liked what Joseph had to say to the other guy, he said, well, I think maybe I'll tell him, maybe he's going to tell me the same thing too. Maybe he's going to tell me I'm going back into Pharaoh's house, and I'm going to serve bread at Pharaoh's table. It said, when he saw the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. I should have told him something right there. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds